So let's talk about open world board games or sandbox board games, essentially the holy grail of board gaming. This idea, if we look back to role-playing games, the narrative of a role-playing game, there's an adventure, there's a story, there's a quest. We may be aware of it, we may not be aware of it, but essentially, even within a dungeon crawl, how you go about achieving those objectives, and not just from the perspective of character classes, how you go about achieving those objectives is completely open-ended. Do you want to go in combat? Do you want to go in magic? Do you want to do stealth? Do you want to do the social aspects? Make those skill checks? And usually it's a combination of both. But there is this sense of discovery where not only do you really not know what's going to happen next, but at the same time, when you do encounter that unknown, that surprise factor, but then how do we deal with it? That's been the focus of role-playing games. And of course, the holy grail in board games is this idea, can we replicate that? Can we capture that in a smaller experience instead of playing for 6 or 7 or 8 hours? Although for a session of KDM, that's nothing, or TI, that's absolutely nothing. But can we take that RPG experience and reduce it down to an hour and a half, 2 hours, or 3 hours? And at the same time, shift the burden of that discovery, that excitement, those calculations from a GM, a game master, or a DM, a dungeon master, or Alien the RPG mother, push that over to the board game mechanics, whether it's cards, dice, quest book. I'm going to put an Overlord type system aside for a moment. Overlord type system, right? The classic Hero Quest. Been having a blast with Hero Quest, right? That classic Hero Quest system, one person plays the monsters and runs the quest, and the other person plays the heroes, or multiple people play the heroes. That's kind of blurring the lines. Is it an RPG or is it a board game? Can we have the mechanics replicated? So from this perspective, really, it's hard to find a game that does these two things: replayability and complete open world sandbox. Because the very idea of replayability means if it's an open world, multiple paths, multiple ways of achieving things. Eventually, you're going to see all of those aspects play out. Maybe there's some quests you don't hit up. Maybe there's some sub-quests. Maybe instead of going left, you go right and it opens up a different book. So we've got replayability. We're looking to navigate that. While at the same time, this idea of the unknown, not really knowing what we're going to encounter. And again, being able to replicate that, I might know that there's a dragon involved, and if it's a board game that has a dragon involved, I'm probably playing it. But how that narrative plays out, that discovery is up to look. So from that perspective, the two games that I have in my collection, and then we'll kind of open it up for discussion or enhancements. Certainly a number of titles in my collection have been recommendations from you in the comments and viewers and over on comments on my blog. But the two games that I have returned to again and again, maybe 3 games. Should we do 3? Because one's kind of in the middle. One's kind of 50-50 in the middle. So we're going to throw it in. I'm going to limit it to 3. Look, I went in with just one. The idea was just one game. Then I'm like, well, really, there's kind of 2 that we're looking at and we're exploring. And now I'm thinking, well, there's kind of 3. So from that perspective, the first truly open sandbox game is Zia in my collection. This is a space, I have to be careful of the tongue twister here, a space-based game. You are a captain of a starship. There is a map that is hex maps that unfolds as you explore sectors, and they're randomized. Deep space, a star system, some sort of anomaly, maybe an asteroid belt, and essentially you're playing to fame points. 10 fame points, 15, 20. The more fame points, the longer the game. And when it's your turn, you decide, well, what exactly am I going to do? How do I get those fame points? Well, you get them by trading, buying cargo on one planet, selling it and delivering it to another. You get it by piracy and other ways, combat. You get it through exploring, looking for lost technology or exploring new sectors of the known universe, interacting with NPCs. Essentially, as you discover as you go, the quests and the stories branch out where you get to decide, what do you want to do in this game? And of course, layered over this, which Zia does fantastically, is the fact that there are numerous little plastic spaceships. Everything's pre-painted, components look awesome, These spaceships are customized. You can add new upgrades to them, but some are faster, some are slower, some hold more cargo, some can have defensive weapons, offensive weapons. You decide where and how you want to go. So you look, and it's entirely possible to say, I'm just going to become a trader. I'm going to run around, zip around the known universe, the Zia sector, and just trade. Or I'm going to run quests and shuttle around NPCs. I mean, there's this idea of like, what do you feel like doing? What's available on the map? What's everyone else doing, competing for? Maybe you're exploring and then immediately a lucrative contract opens up on a planet to deliver some sort of cargo. And you're like, look, I'm going to go in. It's a game of discovery, and it's a game of how do we achieve to the end. So that is certainly on my list. Second, now this is where things get interesting. Is it a role-playing game? It's kind of a board game. It's kind of a choose-your-own-adventure. Legacy of Dragonhold. This is a Fantasy Flight game currently out of print. It was their Oracle system, and they kind of squashed that quickly. And I say out of print, but it's very much in print, as new stock is everywhere, and there's more than enough. But essentially, it's set in the Terranoth universe. You create a character like a role-playing game. You've got certain attributes, and it uses keywords. So you have character classes that have ability keywords. And some of these keywords are very specialized. Some of them are very open-ended. And you can learn these keywords based on your character, based on your profession, based on skills, based on as you level up, based on items. And I'm not going to give away any spoilers. I'm being very, very careful not to give away any spoilers. And as you adventure through the quests, keywords open up possibilities. So it is very much, and there's multiple books, it is very much choose your own adventure. But there's a kind of a board gaming component, and this is where things, I think, really get to shine in terms of production quality. There's a map to explore and mark things off on. There's tokens and cards that add to the quest. Now, are these things absolutely necessary? No, but they're nice touches that pull you into the game. So it's like half board game, half RPG, half choose your own adventure. But what's really interesting about Legacy is the fact that the mechanics, how they're set up, take into account time and further encounters. So there's a unique system of mechanics that has you checking off certain boxes, writing down certain numbers, certain aspects, which means I can go and visit this shop at one time during the day and run into two people. I can visit it later in the day, run into two completely different people also shopping. And those people in that blacksmith or that weapons shop or that potion shop might have different quests, might have different rumors, might have different opportunities. So it's the closest thing I've seen outside of a computer game, digital, that really does an amazing job of replicating a living world. And of course, there's a timer. The quests are advancing, and the backstory, no spoilers, is advancing. There are multiple paths, multiple endings, multiple books, multiple stories. Easily to get one playthrough. I don't have the stats here. I do keep track of all of my stats of every single playthrough. One day, someone's going to look at all these stats and be like, that's a little bit crazy. That's a little bit intense. But from that perspective, I want to say one run through 18 hours, probably 18 hours worth of playing the game. Obviously not at one sitting, although you could. KDM is like, that's like one sitting, bro. That's like nothing. But that playthrough, of course, I haven't hit up all the quests. The ending I got, I don't know if that's the ending to the story. There was easily 3 or 4 playthroughs to this game, and the world is living some aspects of the game, even though at this point I know a lot of the story. I'm happy to just chill out in the village and meet friends and go on little side quests and interact and visit people. It's a really, really unique system. But is it a board game or is it a choose your own adventure? Okay, the last one. There's only going to be 2, but I feel like this one holds a very special place. It's a card game. So, hey, we got a board game in, we got a choose your own adventure, and now we have a card game in. It's currently out of print. I don't think it's coming back, but there are enough in the wilds. Pathfinder, the adventure card game. Pathfinder, the adventure card game. Playing through those, the Rune Lords, Rise of the Rune Lords is my favorite. That's my favorite box. It's the one I play most. I do have the second edition Core and first Adventure Pack. That's where they kind of left it. Both are really good. Both are similar enough. I mean, there's advantages or disadvantages to both. But essentially, it's a card-based role-playing game where you have locations that you visit. You seed a deck unknown, some items, some encounters, some monsters, some hazards, and they kind of reflect what you seed the deck with for each location. Depends on that location, depends on the quest. There's a boss monster to fight and lieutenants to fight. So you have these locations you have to explore. And it's built on kind of really, really loosely the D&D system of acquiring and making skill checks. So if you draw an item, you have to make a check to acquire that item. And you build a deck, you build a hand. There's also followers and spells and all that. It also serves as your life meter. What I really like about this is it's a little light on story, but the narrative that it evokes, that it invokes, that it pulls out as the cards unfold through the locations, I find myself making up a story in my mind. I find myself playing and filling in the blanks as I go. And at this point, again, no spoilers on this. I do my best in all my vlogs to share that excitement and enthusiasm, but I don't want to give away any spoilers or specifics, even though at this point I've played through all the adventure paths numerous times. I know who the lieutenant is. I know who the monsters are. I know what I got to do. Don't always know where they are or how I'm going to encounter them. That's before we get into the different character classes. But the array of items and events and traps and spells and monsters and followers, it creates a very, very entertaining and exciting story. The characters in your party that you play also level up. You get to make choices of abilities and powers. There's different decision trees. I feel like it's an open world, although it is a closed world based on, well, you can't say infinite combinations, but so many different combinations of cards. It has that feeling. So are we at a point? Now this also, I'm going to leave it at this. We're also getting into hybrid games where I've got my board game, I've got my miniatures, but some sort of app is driving it. And the thing about the app is it can be updated, new content can be pushed out, but I don't see behind the scenes. There are many games that I have, Runebound, love Runebound 3rd edition. The adventures have timers where at certain points you pull out an adventure card, a story card, and it affects the realm. It affects the world. So from that perspective, it does a great job of having this narrative going on in the background. And this isn't a criticism. It's a board game. It's a card game. There's like 15 or so triggers. And you use maybe 5 in a game. Eventually you see them all. And I know how many are there. The digital app, I can't see behind that invisible wall. I don't know how many cards are in the deck, even if I haven't seen them. Not that I'm counting cards. I don't know that, oh, look, there's 5 quest books. I jumped from book 1 to 3. So clearly I didn't pick the one that's path number 2. I don't know that. So I wonder, as we move into hybrid games, the fusion of analog and digital, old school components, maps, beautiful miniatures, is that going to create an open sandbox world as we pull in app-based stuff that interlocks and plays with it?